Oh, it's here. It's finally here. It took about 2.5 months for it to finally show up, but we have a wide body kit for the Supra. Now, if any of you have ever owned a Mark III Supra and you've looked for a wide body kit, you would know that there really is only one single option out there, the Shine Wide Body Auto Kit. This one looks like this, but it wasn't something that I particularly wanted. Last time I ran a kit for a Nissan S13, and this time I got something else. This time I got a kit for a BMW E36. It's a Rocket Bunny replica kit, and the reason I went with this one over doing the same kit as last time or having more generic flares is I wanted a bit more boxy look, as I feel like it kind of fits the look of this specific car more. Since this is more of a boxy car, the rounded flares, although they look great, didn't look quite as good as I potentially think these can, so I'm going with these this time. I did get a Ducktail Wing too, and I did something that I have never done before, and that is buy a body part kit that is meant for this specific car. So last time on my old Supra, I ran an S13 rear wing, and it matched the curve of the rear window really well, but when it came to the back, there's a whole bunch of overhang. So I got one that fits this car specifically. We're going to be running this, and it'll look so nice filling out the look of the car. As for these flares specifically, they are huge. I mean, that's roughly the fitting of where they'll be, and that's a big flare. Sticks out really far to the forward, sticks out really far forward, and decently far back as well. Now, it shouldn't be too much of an issue to fit, although the big thing I am concerned about is, of course, the door, although we have some plans for that. Of course, we're also getting new wheels as well. Actually, they're already here. I was gonna get them mounted earlier today, but guess who got sick? It was me. Okay. We also had these front fender flares which fit super well as well. So they'll go roughly around right here, which will fill out to the end of this line, fill out to the end of this line. So the body line of the car, of the original Supra, winds out, and then here it starts to chop straight down. So we're going to be able to trim most of this right off, and with this flare on, what it'll do is it'll really well complement this line going straight out. If it has to be lowered just a little bit, then it'll still fit really well. We're gonna take our measurements, of course, before we start mocking up and drilling holes. Obviously, since there's an area where the headlight would be, same in the rear where the taillight must be, we're gonna have some modification to do. But that really is the extent of the kit. It seems really simple looking at it, but of course, as you can imagine, it's going to take a lot of fine-tuning work. So the quicker we get started, the quicker we're going to know what areas that are going to need the most to be addressed. The poor 3000 has just been sitting here collecting dust since I can't really afford to get the new engine yet. It's just chilling there, alone. One day you'll run. So the first thing that we need to do is I need to bring the wheels out from my room to out here and then get them on the car so we know the exact spacing that we're going to be working with for the flares. Then I'm gonna grab a tape measure, some painter's tape up the flares to start mocking, and then hopefully by the end of the night, because it's roughly 8 o'clock right now, I mean, you could tell, new watch. My goal is to have half of the flares tacked up, cleco pinned up. Same thing, right? No, not even close. Philip, try again. Long story short, we're trying to get these two flares pinned up to the side of the car here. So that way, once we can get these ones dialed in and the measurements perfect, we could just mirror those on the other side. So it's easier just to get 2 done first and then go to the other side versus try to do all 4 at once, because then you're battling measurements and adjustments that you don't know. It's easier just to get 2 done first, but first we're getting the wheels out to replace those. And so with the power of editing, we got our new wheels on and we're good to go. It's also now the next day, so it's sunny outside. Let's open that gate up. All right, with the wheels on, now it's time to start fitting up the kit. So let's grab our tape and get the kit on. Yeah, all right, you know what we're doing, okay. All right, so we have them taped up. They're nowhere near being finished yet, or even mounted in the correct spot is what I meant to say. So you saw me with this Starbucks card using it for some measurements. Let me walk you through the way that you get set up to get your flares set perfectly. Now, it's a lot tougher than it actually looks to get these correct because these are meant for a BMW E36, so I'm not having to worry about the door panel at all. And if we come to the front, you see it looks okay until you get to this front corner, where there's a huge gap. Now, a lot of this will flex out and it'll flex into place, but let me show you some of the things that you need to focus on specifically. The biggest thing is the arch of the wheel. Look at the flare in terms of things that you can trim and things that you can't. I could trim any excess off the bottom, off the back, off the sides, and even if I needed to add things on, like say you need to fill in where this back taillight is and just putting a straight piece of fiberglass, that's actually really simple to do. Things that are incredibly complicated though are getting an arch like this perfectly cut circle all the way around. That's there. It'd be best for me just to use this as the center marker to line up with. Now you can see on this flare specifically, it is a little off-center. There's a little more gap in the back than there is on the front. That's because of two reasons. One, most of the weight is right in this section from the fiberglass, so naturally gravity's pulling it down on this side. The secondly is in the back side here. It's tough to tell, but there's a piece that's supposed to lie flat with the back of the arch on the BMW, but it gets in the way hitting the end on the inside there, so I actually can't move the flare anymore that way. But that all doesn't matter because that all can be trimmed off later with minimal effort or consequences or anything. The thing that we need to focus on, again, it does this arch line up with the circle of the wheel. So what I did is I used that Starbucks card to find the correct gap, which this is roughly at where it will be. And using that, I know the height to work at, so I know what the space would look like from the top to the bottom here. And then I need to find that space all the way around so it can be even. So the question then comes, how would I address these situations for these two flares? Why even try to tape them up if they can't be fitted correctly? Well, the reason that we tape them up is to get an idea of what we're looking at. We can kind of hold them up on our own, but if we tape them up, we're able to take a step back and see, all right, here's where some of the problem areas would be and here's where we need to address. Now, how do we... All right, round one of Cleco pins has been done, and I'm already getting pretty excited, but I got some things exposed. So let me show you what's up. Oh, look how cool that looks. That's amazing. So first run back, we already noticed there are some things in the way. So you may have noticed that I didn't do pins all the way down or to the front on the back as well. That is because I didn't put a pin in anything that needed to be extremely forced, aka things that needed trimming first. So on this front corner, now there's a bit of a gap between here about a 1-inch gap between the tip of the fender and the car itself. And that is because of down here, this piece right here is hitting right up along the edge, so I can't push this back any further, which is connected to up here, so I can't push this back without it being cut down. So what I need to do is I need to trim about 1 inch off of the inside here, trim this back and pin it down. Now this is going to be filled over anyway, so it really doesn't matter how far back I cut this, which is very nice and leaves me some flexibility. So hopefully once I get this one pinned down, then it'll let me be able to finish this out flat. And then there is one more piece that will go underneath here, but I'm not even going to start to pin that up until this part is fully done with the fiberglass stage as well. Coming to the back side of the front fender, this is still the front wheel. Underneath, you guys can't see it, but the bottom has a piece that sticks in and it's hitting the mud flap. So I need to trim off the bottom there before I can push this back pin in. You see there's this big old gap here, and even when I try to push it in, I can't do it. I'm pushing really hard just to get it to there, which is not a good sign because you want it to go into place, but it's all because right up on the front section where my toe is hitting, it's running right into the mud flap underneath. So that's fine, just another area to trim. Trimming is always a great sign, especially on a new flare, because most of it is structure made for the specific car that we don't need, and it won't notice if it is trimmed anyway. Coming to the back, pretty similar story, except for this front section. So with this front section, the deal is that this part of the car curves in, while this part of the flare just goes straight down. So since this is on an indent, I really can't push it in. Now, what I may do is just end up putting a rib nut to hold it into place, and over time, fiberglass will shift its shape to the curve that it's held to. So if I pull it in long enough, so over time, once I get a rib nut in, it'll eventually shape itself, but I'm not quite sure if I want to force it yet. So I'm kind of leaving it be for the time being, as in right specifically now. Now onto the back, same deal as with the front. This piece that's meant to go around the tail light just sticks too far, so it's hitting the corner here, so I can't even put in this rib nut on the corner. Cleco pin. I'm gonna keep saying rib nut. Every time I say rib nut, I mean cleco pin, unless I'm talking about rib nuts. But this would hook around the back of the car on the BMW, but obviously since we're not even near the back, this part is going to need to be trimmed off. And as with the front, this is probably going to be replaced with just a flat piece of fiberglass over top, so I'm not concerned about the whole part of this shape being cut out awkwardly in the meantime. And then on the rest of the back, we have this part here that curves out away from the car, so this part I'm still undecided on what to do on. I'm gonna focus on getting this part trimmed out and hooking up this rib nut and this rib nut, and going from there. I may cut this part off completely right here where it starts to bow away from the car, but I'm undecided yet, and I'd rather cut at the last minute after I've fully made a decision than way too early and have to cry in my room with a bunch of regrets, as well as redo that part with fiberglass. So all in all, we're on a good start. Next up, we're going to trim off the inside here of this tail light. Same with up there on the front, get them pinned down as best we can, and then go from there. All right, the flares are mounted. I just yanked the camera. All right, the flares are mounted for this side. Let's take a quick peek. Quick peek? You guys know what I mean. So after trimming them up, they look so much better than they did before. Well, they fit a lot better at least. They already look good. I really like the look of this back flare. It just complements the car so well. I just love that. Ooh, nice ducktail. Anyway, we trimmed the front back and now we have this side pinned up flush with the car. I decided to leave this front on. I have a feeling I'm gonna cut it off later, but I'm not sure yet. So because of that, I left it on because once I take it off, it's tough to put back on and I could always trim it off later once I get to the fiberglass stage. So for now, that'll lay B. That's not even a term, but I just used it. On the back, I had to trim some up as well, a little right in here so I can get this cleco pin to fit in, holding it in tight. But now that's all flush up against the car. Mini tangent, but compared to my last wide body kit that I ran on my old Supra, this one fits so much better. I'm actually genuinely happy with how well it's coming up flush against all the parts of the car, or against the body of the car. It's gonna make my life so much easier in a little bit. As for the back, we got this back taillight area trimmed out. I clecoed the top, didn't do it on the bottom. I drilled a hole, but then I realized, well, I need to second guess myself on this because it is covering this taillight. That's not a taillight, but the idea that I was thinking of is if I cut this straight down from here, then this won't be an issue being covered. So it's an idea I'm going to play with, and then I could tuck it up here first or further as well. I don't know why, but the more I'm looking at this, the more I like this curve out, even though it doesn't line up well with the body. I think I could blend it in with the diffuser fairly well. But anyway, that's later down the road. The last thing I did was where these two cleco pins are. I trimmed a little bit right up there on that trim piece looking thingy, so that way this part down here was able to flex, and I did pin it up with two cleco pins, so that way hopefully over the next few weeks it'll start to mold into shape, making my life that much nicer. Now that we have the flares on for this side, I want to run over just a few things for any of you who are looking to do flares on your own. Less things to do, but more things actually not to do, because since this is the third car I've wide bodied with a kit that's not meant for it, I've made more mistakes that I hopefully can keep you from making the same ones as well. That's a good sentence of grammar. I'm killing this English game. Firstly, don't make the flare fit your car, but make your car fit the flare. I'm trademarking that phrase, by the way. What I mean by that is you don't want to make the flare fit the car in the sense that you're gonna wanna push the flare back so you don't have to worry about the door, or on this front, you wanna make it line up perfectly with the ridge, or this part line up with the door here so that way it looks nice in that sense. No, you wanna make the flare fit the wheel as it's supposed to fit. And these other parts with the car door, you'll address them later. Number two, only trim when it's absolutely necessary. Never trim anything beforehand, especially with areas like in the back here or on some of the support pieces on the sides and underneath. Don't trim any of those yet. As you saw, we cleco pinned this up a few times before coming through 3 or 4 times, trimming everything to get the right spot. It is so much easier to set it up, take another 2 minutes to put it up and down and trim than it is to wait 5 or 6 hours at minimum to wait for fiberglass to set and cure and new body filler over top. Save yourself the hassle, spend the most time in this cleco pin stage, and everything else down the road will be so much easier. In addition to areas like that back taillight, always leave these underhanging parts on until the last minute. As you can see, there's probably about 3 to 4 inches of underhang on the bottom where the bottom of the car stops here, but the flare keeps going down. Now you want to leave these on because remember, first off, we don't have any side skirts, so there's no extension to the bottom as well. Secondly, again, once that's cut off, I can't easily put that right back on. There's no undo button for this. You would have to re-cure it and re-adhere it to the other pieces, and that's just going to take a lot of time, take a lot of hassle. This will be the last step we do, would be trim this off, and that would only be after I fit side skirts up, so I know that I don't need to have this mesh any longer. And finally, just be patient with it. Understand that if you're putting a kit like a BMW kit on a Toyota Supra, it's not going to fit the way you have it imagined in your head. You may have this perfect idea in how the back flare works, and it lines up so close to what you're thinking, and then the front flare works pretty good, but for whatever reason it doesn't just look quite as good as the back. That's fine. Go with what you have. Understand this is not going to be perfection, but this is just going to be you being able to try something out that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. So just go through the process step by step. Take your time. If you rush it, you're going to get a rush result, which will be noticeable. If you take your time, the results will be so much better, and you won't have to go back and redo everything later on down the road. And lastly, don't be upset if you do have to go back. Even if you take the most time and be extremely precise with everything, there will be mistakes that will be made, and there'll be things that you won't have understood or won't have seen coming until later on down the road, and that's fine. Especially with bodywork, sometimes things take multiple tries, and that's just part of it. So if you understand that, when things go wrong, less frustration, and it'll be more of just enjoying the process of learning. And with that, y'all better subscribe. Okay, that'd be great. Bye-bye.